Welcome to Implicating the Real. My name is Michael. I'm joined by my friends Joe and Liana. How are you doing, Joe?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. Liana, how are you?
Great.
Good, good. It's a nice, cold, sunny day.
Cold.
Nice cold.
Nice, sunny day, February in Minneapolis. And yeah, we're talking Seth, of course. And I think we're going to read these last two paragraphs of session 556 in chapter 13 before we get to the final session of this chapter. Just because I thought these fit in with the topic we're getting into here. So I'll just read a little bit here. If you are to be born as a male, then the mother serves as a stimulus to activate the symbol of the anima in you, so that the pattern of your own female lives becomes a portion of your next existence. Your mother, if you have known her in the past, will find at your birth an upsurge of dreams involving other existences in which the two of you were together. That was just kind of a topic change, I thought, a little bit from the last session, or just segues into this one.
It's kind of poetic. I feel like I've heard stories of people who have a similar thing happen where before a kid is born, they they have dreams about the kid.
Yeah.
I know some people who they're going to be a grandparent. Someone in my family was going to be a grandparent, and he was talking about he had this really vivid dream of playing with this kid, and he could describe exactly what the kid looked like and all this stuff. And then found out that their kid was having a baby. But they didn't.
Oh, before.
Yeah.
That's even cooler.
Right.
Yeah. I'm sure that stuff happens all the time. It'd be cool to, get anecdotes about that. Yeah, that's all I wanted to touch on. Just reading what we were preparing for today. This is a thought I often have reading Seth, but a lot of this stuff just makes a lot of sense. But somehow Seth unearths this other angle to it that just seems new. But it makes sense that your mother serves as this symbol for, femaleness, or vice versa, father, right?
Well, we were talking last time about Jung, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and Jung comes out of Freud. So we shouldn't be that surprised if your parental figures are having an impact in this theory.
But we accept this in our culture and society. You're a male teacher. I think those are very valuable because we recognize how a lot of children don't have male role models in their lives, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Unless you guys got any more, we'll jump into the next one.
Sure.
Okay. The first thing Seth is saying here right now is, now this is a living endeavor, and therefore we take advantage of those happenings in your own lives. And it was I myself who prompted Rupert to pick up the book containing Jung in parentheses in the first place. So he both prompted her to pick it up and then told her to put it down after a certain point, if you remember talking about that.
All right.
But this is something that happens often. When you first start reading this, you question well, why are they including these personal details? And then he's kind of saying that it just kind of it's a living endeavor, and therefore these things just kind of fold together.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me because we talked earlier about how all of it is sort of being spoken out, and he's I've got the whole thing already written, I'm gonna give it to you, right? And then we get to this part and it's well, it's more of a living endeavor, it depends on what Jane's up to, it depends on how she's feeling. But then and then later on, in the next chapter, we're going to get a little piece where Seth is talking to Rob and sort of makes a weird, interesting distinction between stuff that's off the cuff and stuff that's sort of pre-recorded.
Did they use the word programmed?
Programmed, yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad you remember that. I was thinking of it and I was I should focus more on just this book while we're doing the podcast. But sometimes I'm listening to other books and I'm forgetting where things are coming from. But
yeah,
I picked up on that.
Yeah.
What did you think of that?
I thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
I have thoughts about it when we get there.
Okay.
There's meta commentary happening.
It's open for criticism, I think. The way I think of it, or what do you think?
I think it's weird because if there is no time, then why the heck isn't he just always available?
Yeah.
And if he can choose to, if he's a multidimensional entity, which he says he is, why isn't he able to just give us some facet of him always, anytime?
But is that what is he saying that he's not?
He said that it's going to come off as if he's not available, right? He says something
I thought he literally meant it's just pre-programmed, as in I can't do this. I can't sit with you in this session right now. Here's the material. I'm just going to leave it here.
Yeah.
You guys are going to tap into it.
Yeah, right. Like here's like the whole thing I want you to be said, but I'm not going to be hanging out with you and like chit chatting. I'm just going to like, here's what it is. Just, you know?
I'm wondering if he would say that the material is itself alive in its own way.
I think it is because
Yeah.
he said like information seeks you if you want it.
Yeah. I always think of the way because he commented on the William James book that Jane
Right.
channeled. And that apparently wasn't where William James was currently, because he's already beyond that, but she was like tapping into that consciousness that was appropriate for the level of book that she's bringing into this world.
Right. You know what I think it is? I think that Jane and Rob were getting too many visitors and it was like messing with their calendar. So they needed to have a way to tell visitors like, no, it's not that we don't want you to come visit. It's that Seth said. Like Seth said we could only do 2 times a week. Like we would love to do 4 channeling sessions a week, but Seth is like, no, you got to keep it to 2. It's not us, you know?
You know, it's polite that way. It hurts less feelings, right? Yeah. Very Midwestern.
Very Midwestern. Where are these guys in right now? New York, right?
Elmira, New York.
Yeah.
I think it was really funny that like and this we're gonna touch upon this in the next chapter, but like Seth said, go into the back room where you can't hear people knocking, and we like close the door so you can't hear the phone either. And I'm like, it's interesting he told me to do that instead of just stay where you are and just ignore the door if it rings.
He's like, I know you guys cannot help it if the phone rings, so you just need to go somewhere else that's quieter. Like I'm tired of these interruptions.
Well, he knows they get bothered by those things, or I could see it definitely in Jane's case where she's like in a trance and, you know, like theoretically there's all this like psychological work she's doing just to get to that position.
Oh yeah, nowadays it would be hard. Like she'd be in trance for like 10 minutes and she'd have to check her phone, you know? Like,
yeah,
just, like,
the
look
attention
at it.
span. You'd have to airplane mode or something, right? Trance mode. So the topic of this session just like jumps right into it in this paragraph here. And I understand part of this and parts of it. Maybe it's just the way that it's put. I still have some questions about, but here we go. The atoms that compose the fetus have their own kind of consciousness. The volatile awareness consciousness that exists independently of matter form matter according to their ability and degree. The fetus, therefore, has its own consciousness, the simple component consciousness made up of the atoms that compose it. This exists before any reincarnating personality enters it. The consciousness of matter is present in any matter, a fetus, a rock, a blade of grass, a nail. That's exactly what we're getting into in this session, right?
We're going to talk about fetuses.
Surprise. Surprise curveball. We're talking fetuses. Welcome to Fetus Cast.
It's not even that topical anymore politically, I feel like. There's too much other crap going on right now.
Yeah. For posterity, we're currently living in a situation where about half of the country does have legal abortion and about half of the country no longer has it. We're in that era of America.
I mean, yeah, I shouldn't overstate it. It's still definitely a thing. We just have plenty of other stuff happening.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of this? That first paragraph.
I have thoughts, Liana. What do you want to say?
Oh, you should go first.
Okay. To me, all right, so this is a classic problem with panpsychism, right? And like, I know you've read a decent amount of Schopenhauer, and like, it comes up in Schopenhauer too, where in a panpsychist model of the world, like everything, like all the matter, all the material has its own consciousness to it, but yet somehow you can construct the matter into things that have an extra consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like this there's this problem of like determination of consciousness, right?
It's a problem because it's not like simple or it's sloppy. Or...
Yeah, it's sloppy. It's kind of like against Occam's razor. Right?
Yeah.
Like you're adding extra entities that don't need to be there to explain the phenomena.
I get that. I'm not that worried about Occam's razor.
You don't like William of Occam? He's so cool.
I love him. He's such a good philosopher.
I mean, I think there's like something to it. I just don't think like you can extrapolate from this idea that everything has its like simplest explanation. you know?
I mean, the whole is always greater than the sum of its parts. So anytime you have any sort of combination of anything, there will always be some gestalt, something that comes out of it, no? And then of those gestalts, you get a whole bunch of those gestalts together, and then something even higher comes out of it. So I feel like Occam's razor would say that this is the way it has to be, no?
Well, the problem is that like it's in deciding what things are things and what things are merely parts of things, right? Because it's like, where does like your body end and the environment around it begin is kind of like a weird question, especially when like the food that you're eating, like the apple that you're eating has like some consciousness value in it, and then it goes into your stomach and it's like, where does that consciousness go, you know?
But I think having an issue with these sorts of questions, I think just comes out of our like materialism. Like it comes out of a context where we think there is a world of objects. Right.
But
Because we're asking the question like, where does one thing begin and where does another thing end?
but like the problem of parts and wholes extends into idealism too, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that issue is all over the Seth material. Like he's constantly saying, you know, we're trying to conceive of what the personality is, what the identity is, and there's all these different variations, and it just depends on how much you are capable of being aware of, basically.
Right. I mean, the counterfactual, like the reason that you'd be concerned about this whole like Occam's razor thing is like the other position would be like, well, there isn't one personality, there's actually a million personalities, and they all perform exactly the same function, and there's no way of differentiating them from one another. And it's like, well, why should I think that, you know? If they're all doing exactly the same thing, why isn't it just one personality, you know?
But I don't get the exactly the same thing part.
It's like, okay, here's a metaphor. So what would be a good way of talking about this? It's like if I was going to, like, I've got a remote control and I'm trying to make the TV work.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, the remote control's not working. Like, I need to open up the back and I need to like put in like a battery, right? And then we don't know what the batteries look like inside the remote. And I'm like, okay, so what's going on is there's some kind of battery system in here that is making the TV work. And I'm like, I think there's one battery in this remote. And you say, I think there's actually infinitely many tiny batteries inside that remote. And it's like, functionally speaking, all that's happening is there's some sort of battery system that is happening that is making it work. So like, it makes no sense to posit extra batteries, you know?
Right. I'm still not sure how it's related, because I think no one from this, you know, worldview is saying that anything is exactly the same.
Well, that's the point, right? It's like, for an extra entity to be theoretically like viable, it needs to perform a function that is different than if it wasn't there. That's the point.
Yeah.
Like that's Occam's razor, is that if it's doing work, then you have justification for it. But if it's not doing work, it doesn't have justification.
Well, do you think as we get into this that there is some distinction to be claimed here? Because like right away he's talking about like the personality, there's varying times and varying degrees as when the personality enters this other body consciousness of the fetus.
Right. And the question is like, what difference does it make if the personality is or is not in the fetus? Like, does the fetus change from having the personality in it? Because it has a body consciousness, right? Like there's passages that say the fetus itself as like like a physical body has a body consciousness for the entire fetus.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow that's not the same thing as its personality construct.
Personality is somehow like...
I mean, the difference would be the fetus personality will experience different things. If it's in the body, it's experiencing what it's like to be in the womb, and it might be bonding with its mom, it might be forming opinions. But if it's not in there, then it's in that, I don't know what the hell you would call that, in-between space, where it's still doing whatever the heck it usually does between lives, like planning things, helping other people. It's still like having experiences that are changing who it is and its identity, and it's like learning and growth.
But like from the perspective of looking at the fetus, like how could we tell if it's in there or not in there? Like not if we're the personality, if we're a third party observing, how do we know that the personality is in the fetus or not in the fetus? Like, can I as a doctor look at different like fetus in the womb and be like, this one has a personality, this one doesn't?
Okay. Like, I am not 100% sure of this. This is just what I reason. Because Seth said that when you depart your body in your sleep, like when you, I guess, astral project in your sleep, you become very like infinitesimally lighter. to the point where like modern scales can't perceive that yet. So like, yes, it should in theory be perceptible, but we don't have the technology to do that yet.
Right.
There's that's the whole premise of this movie called 21 Grams. It's like from like 15, 20 years ago, and
I
it
think
probably
I've
doesn't
heard this.
hold up very well, but that was the premise. It was this like mind blowing. Oh, we actually weighed it, and it's like 21 grams lighter at the point of death.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, that's still like, it still feels like caught up in like a materialist point of view that we need to like measure the mass of something to know that it's actually there.
Well,
And-
I would accept that the behavior is different too. It's just like, is there difference in behavior? Yeah.
Yeah. But also like what does this third party observation prove if we can or can't?
Well, you're trying to prove if the personality matters or not. Because like, here's what I could say, right? Like, let's extend the metaphor, right? Like beyond birth. So the fetus is presumably fine just having a body consciousness. And the fetus, according to Seth, can be birthed without the personality in it. The
Mhm.
personality can come after the point of birth.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine for a period of time. Like, you can't
Yeah.
just have the body conscious for like months though.
Why not?
Didn't he say in dreams you have to return?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he says it in this chapter, I think, that like, you know, when it happens as an adult, you're in a coma, you know, where that's a plain distinction for a third party. Like, there's a living body there, but there's no personality. They're just laying there asleep, you know?
Okay, so it's like the actual conscious awareness is the personality.
I think so. Another explanation is like that I think is more in tune with Occam's razor, that, you know, the building blocks, if everything's consciousness, that is a simple explanation. Even the building blocks, you know? So like, why can't consciousness use it in this way where it's overlapping for a certain point, you know?
Because then it's overlapping.
But like, I think elsewhere Seth talks about like, it's the same concept, I guess. So maybe it's not an argument, but like, you know, there's different gradations of consciousness. Like the cells have their own, and then the tissues, and then the organs, and then,
Right.
and weren't we talking about like transplanting organs last time, where like somebody gets like different cravings or has different dreams after they get an organ transplant?
I don't know if that's because of the genetics or if
Yeah.
it's something
Right.
abstract.
Yeah, there's like an overabundance of this thing happening.
Yeah.
But I guess, so what you're saying is like the body consciousness can't actually be conscious.
I don't know if I'm saying that for sure, but like, I think when you're asking that question, is how do you tell the difference? Like, I mean, we can jump ahead to the part where he talks about the coma, but
Because he just says like before the point of death sometimes, like the personality will like leave the body, right?
let me just jump ahead to that because we're kind of there. It says, now a crisis, particularly in very early or very late in life. And he's saying this right after outlining this like optimum point of focus that can last from a week to 30 years. So you have the personality has less of a stronghold on the body consciousness in the early part and the late part of life.
Yeah.
A crisis, particularly in the very early or very late life, may so shatter the personality's identification with the body that he vacates it temporarily. He may do one of many things. He may leave it so completely that the body goes into coma if the body consciousness has also suffered shock.
Right. If
So
the
that's
body
like-
consciousness is also
okay.
super shock.
So then he goes into, if the shock is psychological and the body consciousness is still operating more or less normally, then he may revert to an earlier reincarnational personality.
So presumably the body consciousness can just like keep going.
Well, actually, I think it's the opposite, because he's saying that another personality jumps up to take control of that body consciousness.
No, it said the personality would jump to doing something else.
If the shock is psychological and the body consciousness is still operating more or less normally, then he may revert to an earlier reincarnational personality.
Yeah. Like the personality will revert. Like he is referring to the personality.
I'm interpreting it as the body will revert to a previous personality because it's the personality vacated and is doing other stuff, like it's too afraid or whatever the heck happened to go back into the body. And then while that's out, then the body itself just takes on another one. That's
I'm
how
looking at it that way too, but I think it is worded poorly if it is saying that, maybe.
Because one of my big concerns with like this passage, right, is like if we read it in that way, then we get into this interesting position where we can sort of posit that like some percentage of people out there are like zombies, right? They're just body consciousness without personality, you know?
But you're arguing for your position in order to make that criticism. where I'm like, one of the reasons I'm reading it this way, this last part we're talking about, is because elsewhere he's talking about the people that do like these massive doses of psychedelics, they actually kill their like outer ego. And he says there's always another one ready to take over.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Regarding your comment about zombies, he also says that because of our culture not really being able to understand the point of like transition into death, a lot of older people, what we think is dementia is actually their personality, like seeing different probable realities or like visiting other probable realities, like sort of like an orientation where you got accepted into college, now you're going there a lot just to get used to it and dip your feet in. And to us, that seems like a deterioration, and we call it dementia, but it's actually just like a natural thing that in certain, I guess, tribal cultures or other cultures, they see that as like a good thing. They don't think it's a negative mental health issue. They think it's like this elderly person is starting to transition. We're going to listen to what he has to say because we know that the realities he's seeing are valid. We just can't see them. And it's like just a completely different perception where it's more of like a celebration of life than this like depressing, oh, grandma's not here anymore. But like when you say zombie, it just made me think of that because like, yeah, it does happen to an extent where they do vacate, but they're not zombies. They're just like, we call it confusion, but I think Seth would say it's because they're starting to mix the different probable realities together.
Yeah.
Where they're witnessing something valid, it's just we can't see that timeline, so it's effectively invalid for us, what they're seeing.
But like the rest of this chapter is gonna like relate to this question, so we can keep like mulling it over. But like right away, what we're getting into next is like the same sort of thing, just at the beginning of life. Like there's varying points at which the personality enters the fetus, and then even then, it's not totally there necessarily until this like really strong focus takes hold.
Yeah.
It's kind of a lot here, but I'll just start reading some. The reincarnating personality enters the new fetus according to its own inclinations, desires, and characteristics, with some built-in safeguards. However, there is no rule then saying that the reincarnating personality must take over the new form prepared for it either at the point of conception, in the various earliest months of the fetus growth, or even at the point of birth. The process is gradual, individual, and determined by experience in other lives. It is particularly dependent upon emotional characteristics, not necessarily of the last incarnated self, but the emotional tensions present as a result of a group of past experiences. Just do this last paragraph. Various methods of entry are adopted. If there is a strong relationship between the parents and child-to-be, then the personality may enter at the point of conception if he is extremely anxious to rejoin them. Even here, however, large portions of self-awareness continue to operate in the between-life dimension. Maybe it's not this quote, but I just like this idea of like this decision is kind of permanent in a way, you know, as long as this life goes, but like you're kind of committed to it, but like you don't have to be like fully invested if you're not. You know, it's like you go to school, like you can sit in the front row and pay attention if you want. Otherwise, you can just sit in back and fuck off.
Yeah.
This is kind of what I was talking about with when I was describing that movie effect or cinematography effect in Poor Things, where it was kind of like removed and fuzzy at times. And I think that's kind of what it was pointing to, because without getting into spoilers, part of the premise of that movie was a different consciousness and a different body.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll say it again, just like this stuff makes sense to me, to the way I look at the world, and it's giving me new insight. I don't know, it's intuitive in that way. Is this like according to your worldview? Did you have like strong opinions on like what's happening here at this part of life?
I was gonna save it for a little later, but
I mean, I think the whole story, like we can't tell this part of the book without relating the fact that like Jane has had an experience with like having a miscarriage, right? And like I see all of this whole storytelling as sort of a way of like working around that, right? To be like, was there or was there not a person in that baby, right? And giving yourself the leeway of being like, well, if you think that there is like a soul inside your womb, that's a personality that entered at conception, and you're right, and that's valid. If you had a miscarriage and you're really concerned that there was a person there that died, that there wasn't a personality in it yet, you don't have to worry, right? She's giving enough space that all of those things can be valid and true, right? That's what's
So you
happening.
think it's just a way to make it, emotionally easy for people to digest harsh things?
Yeah, I think that's what's happening here.
Huh.
Because otherwise, why get so specific into it? It's to me.
Well, you do
I like-
because this is like the topic of the material broadly, right? Is just how reality works.
Sure, but like to me, I joke about it, but it really does feel like it comes out of left field in this chapter. It's just all of a sudden we're talking about fetuses for multiple pages, and it's like, I think there's a reason for that.
I mean, it's a chapter on reincarnation. He's talking about the relationship of the fetus to the parents
Right.
and how it affects things. Like, if you like your parents, you're gonna come sooner. If you don't, you're just gonna be like, oh, whatever. I'm stuck with these people because they provide the best environment for me. I'll just go in at the point of birth.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of it, he's saying that you can't really talk about it without talking about the end of life. And like death is maybe the biggest existential question humanity has ever had. Like he's talking about, the mechanics of, consciousness in this reality. I see how you're connecting things there. I just don't think it's like, to take a different point of view, I don't think that makes this like glaringly like, like why is this in here kind of thing,
Yeah, it's just like, I think it's just the most profound thing I have to say about it. Like anything else seems minor in comparison to, like, that's just like, it's such a big fact in it that it's like, I think that's most of the story,
I mean, I think the point he's trying to get across is what Michael said, that death it's not like this sudden abrupt thing. You kind of start leaving and coming back in.
Mhm.
Same with birth. You can't really talk about how that happens at birth without explaining it, because people are inevitably going to be like, okay, when does this baby soul show up? Before or after birth? And so he's just like, here's all the information so that I don't just get slammed with questions later.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then the very first sentence, or the first one that I read, was that now this is a living endeavor and therefore we take advantage. Like, to me, I see you can still argue your same argument, but like he's kind of saying like these things that happen in your life do bring out that pre-programmed, like what we were going to talk about. Like now it's relevant here. What is the word he uses for like the way consciousness operates outside of like physical life, where it's like, you brought it up before, where it's just like connecting similarities.
Like associative?
Yeah, like associative. Like I feel like that's the events in Jane and Rob's life, I think, are kind of associative to the delivery of this material in that way.
Yeah.
He's claiming that associative process is like the more natural, like base reality way of things. So I see the connection though. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, the other part is that I think it's really funny that, what did I put in my notes? It was like, new personality quiz dropped.
Because we'll get to the point where we talk about, okay,
So here's the two main sections of fetus. There's two types of fetus, right? There's fetus where the personality entered before the point of birth, and there's fetus where the personality entered after the point of birth. And if you entered before the point of birth, you're like a badass, and you're like, I'm here to do the shock of being born and entering physical reality, and I'm gonna like experience all of it, and it's gonna be tough, and I'm gonna like live through it.
You're like,
And if you're like a pussy, you enter after the point of birth, because you're like, that seems too hard. I don't want to do it. I'm just going to let the body be born, and then I'm just going to like jump in after that, right? And then there's this perplexing amount of personality that is associated with these things. Like if your personality entered your fetus at the point where it was like birthed, like after it was birthed, you're like a gangly, scrawny, weak little nerd. Is like how it's described, right?
yeah. Exactly. Well, I mean, I think you're picking up on something, because we're so thirsty for like self-identification. Like, what am I? Like, where do I fall on this? And I know you're playing it up for the humor, but it is like a spectrum. Like, that's the far end is like, oh, I'm gonna enter at the point of conception and ride out this womb state, and then.
And those people are said to be greedy, right? They're greedy people because they're greedy for physical existence.
Well, I think he was saying that it can be for good reasons and it can be for poor reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe vice versa on the other end.
So I can just imagine, like, if you're a person, listener, if you're a person who does, fortune telling, you do tarot readings, you do like star charts and stuff. The next thing you need to add to your repertoire is allowing your clients to identify at what point during their conception to birth story their personality entered, and telling them what that means for them.
You'd have to do some sort of like hypnosis, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta weigh the mother and see when the 21 grams.
Yeah.
Every day. Yeah, it's like, oh, she put on 24 grams. Oh, here it is.
Personality's here. Abortion off the table.
It says, in the beginning, the womb state under these conditions is a dreamlike one, with the personality still focused mainly in the between life existence. Gradually, the situation reverses until it becomes more difficult to retain clear concentration in the between life situation. So, like, he does start getting into this, like, even if you're in there right away, like, you still have part of your consciousness in this in between life.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's just natural that like a huge transition needs to be gradual and to some degree. I don't know.
My impression is that Jane thought it would just be like really boring to be a fetus.
So like, why would you want to do that for 9 months? Like, you're just chilling there, like not doing anything.
Well, yeah, I imagine you're probably like, even if you're in there, you're sleeping. So like in the same sense that, like you're in the world sleeping, your consciousness is in more of that in-between stage, right?
Yeah, that
Babies
makes
need to
sense.
sleep a lot, even after birth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and the boring part isn't a small factor. Like, what do you got to do in there besides like kick and punch your mom's uterus? Just like scrawling the days on the wall. Like, how long have I been in here? Other personalities who never completely take to earthly existence may hold off full entry for some time, and even then always remain at a certain distance from the body. At the other end of the scale, before death, the same applies, where some individuals remove their focus from physical life, leaving the body conscious alone. Others stay with the body until the last moment. In the early days of infancy, there is not a steady focus of personality in the body in any case.
I just realized you guys have heard of the term terminal lucidity, right?
I don't know.
It's a phenomenon that like a lot of medical professionals will observe, where patients who are dying will be like really out of it and not really there for weeks, and then the day before they die, they're fully there. Like,
They come back.
grandma just starts talking to people, is able to remember everyone, holds conversation, is laughing, and everyone's like, "Oh, look, she's getting better," and then like they know that's terminal lucidity, and then she just passes within 24 hours. I wonder, because you said that some of them will stay up until the point of death. I'm wondering if maybe that phenomenon could be explained by, the full personality actually comes back and is like, okay, I'm going to come back to die. Whereas like the last few weeks, I was just sort of orientating myself to the in-between.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My family time to like get everyone into town.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, everyone's here. Like, hey, what's up? I'm back.
Right. Yeah. Like, please remember me like this, not like how I was when I was doing my death orientation.
Yeah.
I think it's like moving, right? Like you got your new place, and maybe you have like 2 months to gradually do this, and you're going to paint the walls first before you start, and then you just can take your time, or you just have to like shove everything in a fucking truck, drive across town with shit falling all over, and then just throw it out, right? Like it can be anything. I like that term though. That's like a medical term or something to describe like that phenomenon.
It's the term to describe that phenomenon.
I was just watching this show called The Pit. It's kind of it's a emergency room drama that kind of like takes like the 24 model, where so like the whole season is just one day. Like the first episode is like from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. But anyways, there's an old person dying there, and they're kind of like out of it like that, and they're like, should we intubate, should we not, or whatever they have to do to keep them alive. And then I thought they did it well, because the older children are there, and they finally achieve this like emotional peak where they're like saying goodbye. And then the father actually comes back to them, and apparently like says their name and can see them for a second before he dies. So I'm sure they're not pulling that. I'm sure they just didn't make that
No,
up.
it's pretty common.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's like the thing with the cats.
Yeah, the cat in the nursing home.
Yeah. I mean, it's common enough that I don't actually know if nurses will tell people who are celebrating, like, hey, grandma's back, that, like, this is not really a good sign.
Yeah. I feel like hospice people are really good about being very like honest about like where things are, but I don't know about like medical staff across the board.
Yeah.
Well, they care a lot about like closure and grieving, and like it's the important thing about it is that like there's this pathway for people to be able to like have the kind of conversations they need to have for the like remaining family,
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's like it's good that happens. So I'm sure like if that's like a commonly understood thing, people like try to take advantage of it by being like, hey, like maybe you guys should be around because they seem like they're, a little more awake, a little more aware. Like you guys should come visit, like that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
The other analogy besides moving I was thinking of is like just how different people will get into like a cold lake. Some people like really have to go slow, and then they get to a certain point and they're like no, and then some people just like run right off the end of the dock without even thinking twice.
What is the balls of the death experience?
What do you mean?
Like, because that's the point, right? Like, I don't know if you have that, but that's where I stop usually.
What?
Is you're like hovering the balls right above the water?
Oh. Yeah. Well, it's kind of a commitment, right? It's like a threshold of commitment. Like you're this far into it. I don't know, but it's funny. I was thinking, maybe I'll just read this next paragraph. In all cases, the decisions have been made ahead of time, as I told you. The reincarnating personality is aware, therefore, when the conception for which it has been waiting takes place. And while it may or may not choose to enter at that point, it is drawn irresistibly to that time and point in space and flesh. What I was thinking of there is like, you make this decision and you're like on the ship, you tie the rope to your ankle and you throw the anchor and you're like, you're just watching the rope go and you're like, I still got a little time here, but this decision's been made. You're irresistibly drawn to that point.
This might just be because I've been building battle sisters, but like it made me imagine like little like cherub ghosts like floating around the womb, just like, oh, I'm the consciousness and there's the baby, and it's like drawn to the moment but not in the body. It's just sort of like ghostly, like floating around like tee hee hee, I'm a little ghost baby.
Not like angelic like helper, but like the cherub is the actual personality.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but it sounds like once you decide to choose life, well, so it does say like no decision is final, right? And we do have a lot of like miscarriages, and especially going farther back, a lot of like short lives, and children and stuff. So
no one wanted to be around in that time,
Like it was just less exciting to live there.
Personalities are like, oh, this is what it's like here. I'm good.
It's fine. Sorry, I'm canceling my plans.
The way I look at it is like that was a good time for you to like just try out a short life. Like, oh, if you're gonna try a short life, go into this century where they didn't know anything about like healthcare and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
you'll always have an easy out there.
Like the medieval ages, I have 20 kids so that one would survive.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just one guy like doing births over and over
And over again. Like, oh, you think one birth is bad? Check this out. Just riding them out.
My mom had quite a few miscarriages before and after me, and she told me she thought that I was part of at least a couple of the ones before.
Really?
Yeah.
I've heard anecdotes about that, yeah, where I love reading these anecdotes of people who are like, my kid is saying some weird stuff. Like, please explain how they know this stuff that we never told them about. Like they'll be like, yeah, I used to be your daddy. And the mom's like, yeah, sure. And then they'll pull out a photo album and then they'll point at the grandfather that they never met and be like, yeah, that was me. And then they get like really spooked. And then like, it starts to have like manners. But like, I hear anecdotes that are similar to what your mom says, where the woman will have miscarriages and finally have the baby. And then the child at speaking age is like, I used to be in there, and then I left, and I came back, and then the mother would be like, literally no one but myself and my husband knew about the miscarriages, and they get like really freaked out.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I'm into this stuff, so like when she told me that, it wasn't that long ago. I was like, I earnestly apologize. Like, I'm sorry if that was hurtful, and I know it was a tough time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just dipping your toes in, Michael.
Yeah, where does that put him on the
Yeah, where does
birth
that put
personality
You know,
spectrum?
when I think of the way I approach things, it is kind of like very carefully, but like eventually, like once I feel like I'm seeing all the angles, I'm pretty confident about it. But I will be like, like socially, I'll just kind of like sit back and observe for a while before I let the full personality come out. So like it makes sense to the way I know myself to be. So
Hell yeah, man.
Interesting.
New personality test. Let's go.
Joe, you gotta like commodify this. You gotta patent something
That's
here before it's too
true.
late.
We got to start making money off of it.
Yeah. People love this shit. Like, when it's on the apps, the dating scene, like you have to.
Oh, the
No.
whole huge paragraph bio of all the different things.
Yes.
Yeah.
You gotta let people know what they're getting into.
Mm-hmm.
It says, on occasion, long before conception takes place, the personality who will end up as the future child will visit that environment of both parents to be drawn again. This is quite natural. Peculiar.
Yeah.
And then there's a line about like, in these terms, the ghosts of the future are as real in your homes as the ghosts of the past.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's what you said with the cherubs floating
Yeah.
around.
This little spooky cherubs.
The ghosts of the future.
That's so funny.
Was it earlier in this book that he said that the shock of birth is way more intense than the shock of death?
I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's peculiar too. Like if you are in between lives and you have this knowledge of like what birth is actually like, it almost make you think you'd be more reluctant to like be present at birth. I see on one hand like, oh, I've done this before, it's not that bad, but like sometimes
Yeah.
like I know like as a climber, like leading this huge overhang, I was less afraid of it before I knew what it was like. Now that I know, it's intimidating.
That's like a big problem for athletes, right? Like gymnasts or whatever, if they have like a really big fall and they have to like get over
Yeah.
like the fear aspect of it because it like holds them back from being able to like fully perform.
Yeah, like in the beginning, I was like, oh, well, logically, I trust the people training me and they know what it's doing. The rope is going to catch me. I'm just going to see what happens. This wasn't a big deal. I was able to just like displace that concern. But yeah, it's curious. The shock of birth has several consequences, however, that usually draw the personality full blast, so to speak, into physical reality. Before this, the conditions are fairly uniform. The body consciousness is nurtured almost automatically, reacting strongly but under highly controlled conditions. At birth, all of this is suddenly over and new stimuli are introduced with a rapidity that the body consciousness has never to that point experienced.
It kind of reminds me of what you said about like getting into a pool. When you first get in, that's much more of a shock than when you're like already wet and you get out, and even if it's cold outside. It's...
Yeah. At some point, and I think it goes further too, because if it's kind of cold, like if you're used to the water, you're actually like more comfortable if you stay in the water.
Yeah.
You're like wet and you come out of it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? This kind of expands on that. I believe it is referring to the body consciousness, greatly needs a stabilizing factor. Previously, the body consciousness has been enriched and supported by deep biological and telepathic identification with the mother. The communication of the living cells is far more profound than you imagine. The identification is almost complete before birth as far as body consciousness alone is concerned. Until the new personality enters, the fetus regards itself as a part of the organism of the mother. This support is suddenly denied at birth. If the new personality has not entered earlier to any full extent, it usually does so at birth in order to stabilize the new organism. It comforts the new organism, in other words. The new personality, therefore, will experience birth to varying degrees according to when it has entered this dimension. Does that kind of answer the question or further answer the question we were talking about earlier?
It just brings it to like another place to me where like the next step of like the zombie thing, right, is like the personality does this like comforting like sort of function.
Yeah. The word he keeps using there is stabilize.
Yeah.
Just to stabilize the new organism.
Well, yeah, and the body consciousness is like the organism, right? So like there is the other question of like with this overdetermination issue, there's the idea that like we've been considering ourselves as the personality, but what's to say that you are not the body consciousness and the personality is just a different thing, you know? Like there seems to be no reason that you couldn't identify with the body consciousness instead and then have some other part of your psyche be identified with the personality, you know?
Well, I think as we sit here now, they're kind of one and the same. You know, they come together. They're sharing an experience. I think so. I think together they're sharing an experience. And this comes up again too when Seth talks about like intense pain. There's one time where the cat was playing with a mouse, or he's talking about a cat playing with a mouse, and Shane and Rob were like, you know, commenting how cruel it was. But like, maybe it was even like the psychological pain more than the physical pain. But Seth was like, well, yeah, he's talking about this, the personality consciousness leaves the body. And I'm pretty sure he says elsewhere that this matter consciousness delights in all sensation. So there's no like good or bad as far as like there's no pain or pleasure. It's just delighting in all sensation. So there's really, we look at it as like this horrible, torturous thing. It isn't necessarily, because at a certain point, you know, he already read the paragraph about the crisis, you know,
Yeah.
like that acts as like a separator in that sense.
I just want to say, I don't know if I mentioned this already, but I like reading about near-death experiences, which is generally used to describe when people are either like really close to death or they actually become clinically dead and then are resuscitated later, and the experience refers to what they experienced when they were dead. And I've read a lot of people, it's like a really common thing where at the point of actual death, the person will suddenly find themselves looking at their body from like a third person above point of view, which is really confusing to them, and sometimes they don't even know that it's them they're looking at, and they'll watch their body die, but they'll still respond. So like a really common example would be the light turns green and they start going, and then a truck or a car just like suddenly T-bones them at like a really high speed out of nowhere, and they'll pop out and they'll watch themselves like, you know, cover their face or like put their hands up to protect themselves. And I always figured that was the body consciousness that Seth is talking about. And they'll say like, I didn't really feel pain at the point of death, even though like when the firefighters arrived on the scene, I looked terrible and people would like see me afterwards or like during the scene and think that I must have been in excruciating pain, but they weren't. They were just watching the scene. When they wake up in the hospital bed later in their body after resuscitation, yes, they're in a lot of pain. But I've read like really commonly that people just aren't really there to experience the suffering of death.
Mm-hmm.
And that the mouse thing you were talking about, I'll just read this one sentence. Yeah. A cat knows how to kill a mouse, and the consciousness of the mouse knows when to leave. Because, and then he goes on to say, like, the mouse understands this. He doesn't see it as cruel because the mouse has also once been a predator in the past. So he, like, understands this game of food cycle and life. So he doesn't have to be there. And I think that's why our consciousness gets pulled out at the point of death sometimes. Because it's like, what are we going to benefit from feeling ourselves getting T-boned?
Yeah. And that brings up a lot, but one thing I'm thinking of is like, if we are looking at life, or we're using games as a metaphor again, and life is this intense game that you can like almost be completely immersed in. You're like, well, why wouldn't you want to like play the mouse character? Like, I want to check out this part of the game. I want to check out this part of the game. Like, that's my personality. I want to know what this is about.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be the mouse this time. You be the cat, you know.
Yeah, it's like cops and robbers.
Yeah, and because Seth also explains that like we are choosing this on some level, like when we die and stuff, right? And how. Yeah.
Sorry, you were gonna say something, Joe.
Oh, I was just gonna make a joke.
Oh.
I was just gonna say, listener, if you are a masochist, then you are more than 50% body consciousness.
That's all I'm saying.
Because the body consciousness delights in pleasure. It delights in pleasure and pain.
Delights in sensation.
Yeah, sensation of all kinds. So there you go. That's why, listener, if you've ever wondered.
Why do you like getting hit like that? There's your answer.
I think there could be more than one reason, but that's probably one of them. That I was making another connection to what Seth talks about survival being. Who was it that just read this quote yesterday?
You did.
About fear and survival.
Psychological structure. Is that the term?
Yeah, I gotta pull it up because I don't want to butcher it.
But basically he's saying because survival is this consciousness survival is this like built-in psychological structure. That is where the personality brings in this this moral judgment of sensation. The reason why pain is pain as a sensation is because it is destructive to our survival. That seems like an obvious statement, right? Like if we didn't care about, the personality didn't care about surviving, then you could saw your leg off and you'd be like, oh, this is interesting, you know?
Yeah.
I have it here. It's fear is not a basic psychological structure. Survival is a basic psychological structure.
I love that. It's like the beginning of some session, but like,
It's like TES too. It's a really early session. I think it's session 75.
yeah, I've gone back to that one quite a bit. We might have to read more of that at some point.
This makes me think of this culture out there. I don't remember what they're called, but they have this practice where for boys to become men at around the age of like 13 or maybe even 11, they have to go through this ritual, and the whole like village comes to watch, where they have to put their hand in this glove
The
with
ants?
ants that are like excruciatingly painful, and they're set to endure like dozens of these ants biting them. And I remember I watched some video of some like American guy going and getting bitten by one ant, and it was like horrible for him. Like I think he was like vomiting from how painful it was. But these like little boys are just doing this with dozens of ants on their hands. They just have to endure that to become every man has to go through that. But it's like seen as a celebration because it's like, your little boys growing up.
I thought you were going to say, or maybe making this connection is that like the pain is so bad that it kind of like shocks them to a sort of out of body state.
Possibly, yeah.
I once got bit by like, I don't know what kind of ant it was, but like it basically used its like mandible to like clamp onto me and then just repeatedly sting me with its. So you like, this is on the top of my foot, and I was like, your initial reaction is try to kick it off, but it's like, it's clamped on there. So it's like, it's a panicked feeling. That was just one I had. So yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Something.
they're called bullet ants because it's like the most painful sting ever. Like it really feels like you're being shot. It's not just like regular ants, like fire ants. It's some crazy type of ant.
That's funny you brought that up because I just like came across that recently doing some research for my book. And it also sounds like they, even after they go through it as an adult, they still like do that again sometimes.
I think so, yes.
Also strange.
Interesting. Could be me.
Yeah.
I mean, I've recently been thinking a lot about pain just because of, the stuff that's been going on with my tooth.
Yeah.
Pain is intense, man. Like, it slows down time,
Yeah.
Like, you have to really sit and experience every moment of pain for whatever, extended period of time you're in pain. It's hard to get out of it.
And sometimes you want to slow down pain. It's slow down time, but not when you're in pain.
No, yeah, exactly. It sort of forces you. It's tough.
Do you have like a philosophical take on pain?
I think it's awful. I think it's the worst thing in the world.
One thing I've heard that I've found is like, it's the one thing you can't argue with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's existentially one of the closest things to you as a psychological, like, existential entity. Like, one of the things that is most near and close to you is pain. And, like, it seems weird unless you've, like, listener, if you've experienced intense physical pain, you understand what I'm saying. Like, if you experience pains intense enough, it blots out every other thing in the world except you and the pain, and you just sit there together, and like you just have to coexist as this little dyad,
And yet we know as anecdotally that there is a point where you like just disconnect, or like from what Seth's talking about with the mouse thing.
Yeah,
we can't keep someone alive indefinitely and torture them indefinitely,
right,
for good
you'll
reason.
eventually turn off, right?
Which gives another reasoning to why, like, if this is a designed spiritual development sort of dimension here, that why death is a good thing, that we can't like torture each other forever.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
We could also just not do that.
Well, that's what we're learning, right? We're learning not to do that. So then when we are in an actual like immortality state, then we're not actually doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, given what I just said about like survival being this like psychological structure, if we're not worried about survival because we are in an immortality state, then do you even have like anything that could be called pain?
I wonder about the survival being primary thing.
Yeah, I'm giving a lot of like context there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's Seth's worldview.
Somewhat related, this reminds me of how there's like a genetic condition that some people can be born with where they don't feel pain at all. And
Whoa.
it's generally not a terribly good thing because
Yeah.
they don't learn what they are not supposed to be doing, so they end up like as children getting injured a lot. They're like really clumsy. They don't know what their limits are, and some of them will start to do really reckless things like jump downstairs, jump off roofs,
Yeah.
and then that actually injures them to the point where sometimes they become like wheelchair bound, and then their quality of life just like goes to shit.
Yeah.
And some of them end up like killing themselves. But like it just goes to show like how protective pain is and how important it is to survival.
It's almost like those people need to go like to like a separate like school where it's like constantly drilled into them. Like you can't do this.
Yeah.
You really can't.
It's really difficult though, I think,
Yeah.
because you have like diabetics who let their diabetes get bad enough that if there's too much sugar in your blood, it starts to essentially kill your nerves in your extremities.
Whoa.
So that's called like diabetic neuropathy. And a lot of these people end up having to get an amputation because they injure their feet and they don't feel it because they don't feel pain. Or like in some really bad cases, they injure their foot by stubbing it. And it's so bad that like the tissue starts to die. And then in their sleep, their dog literally starts to eat it. And like you can't really fix that. So they just have to cut it all off. And it's literally just because their nerves died. They don't.
Yeah.
So they're still awake. They presumably when they were younger and healthier, they know like, yeah, I can't be kicking my foot around and stuff. Like they know what it was like to do stuff. I really think like even with training, it's really hard with that immediate feedback mechanism of like pain
Yeah.
to tell you like don't put your foot right here.
Agreed. Yeah, it's necessary.
Yeah.
I think I saw some advertisement for a new show that's kind of the premise. I don't know if it, but basically the guy can be like a temporary superhero because he doesn't feel pain. He's like, well, I can just do this. I can fight this big dude. I can,
Mm-hmm.
there's no consequences besides the debility.
That's so interesting because you know how like when you're in extreme pain, your body will inject you with endorphins or adrenaline, so you can't feel it like you're in shock. When you're like adrenaline's pumping, you can't feel pain. So I guess you could be like a ghetto version of that guy, but just carrying out an EpiPen whenever you want to do something crazy.
Yeah.
Inject yourself, and there you go.
What was that one called? Cranked? Is that what the movie was? Where the guy's got like the battery attached to his chest or whatever?
Sounds right. I don't know this movie.
Yeah.
Do the people born with this condition, do they experience the endorphins?
That is a good question. I'm not sure.
It's curious. You got anything else coming up?
No.
I made all my jokes.
Joe's out.
I'm out.
That's our show, but fear not, the never-ending conversation continues next week. If you're enjoying the show, please be so kind as to subscribe, like, rate, and review, and if you're feeling frisky, tell a friend. Contact us at implicatingthereal@gmail.com. You can support the show at patreon.com/implicatingthereal. We are doing our best, but whatever support you can lend helps us appreciably. We are not affiliated with the publishers or proprietors, but we encourage you to get the books. You can follow along as we endeavor to dive deep into the Sethian worldview, and there's really nothing like cultivating your own relationship with the material. Until next week, we wish you a fun good evening.